When anyone looks at our world today, everyone has the same feeling. Things have to change. There's so much sorrow, so much uncertainty, so much chaos, violence, distress, worry. Sometimes we try to avoid, ignore, and escape through facilities in the outer world. Technology, beautiful places, company. But there's still this little voice inside that is restless, nervous, anxious, aware. The problem is still there. What is the solution for our world today? Where does the change need to happen? And even what is all this upheaval signaling? I take these questions inside, and oddly, they don't seem overwhelming. They seem like they're pointing towards a light, a solution, a hope. That the change needs to happen within us, a place where change is possible. I can't control things outside, but I can start to learn how to change things inside. And any change inside is not physical in nature. It's a change in my mind, my thoughts, my attitude, even my heart, consciousness. It's a spiritual change. If things can be transformed inside, we might start to see the world outside we would all like to live in. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, good evening. Welcome to Interview with a Raj Yogi. And so today is a special day, June 24th. It is, we call it Mama's Day. And this is the second student in the study. Amazing efforts. And so we would like to mention about her. She'll be a part of today's topic. And so I will let Sister Judy share more about her, but in terms of spiritual transformation, this is a soul who transformed very quickly. And the topic, particularly about this, why fulfilling transition, is because often spirituality is seen as an ascetic practice, it's seen as being bereft, it's very punitive. Even purity has some negative connotations. And so, at least what touched me today was it would be a very, just the attainments from it. And when I hear about Mama, the student, she was full. So, at least for Sister Judy, if you sharing about Mama, if you could share more about even what you've heard of her, her efforts, that she becomes so full, because that's a challenge that I hear regular students have, that in terms of filling up for change, not for it not to be something that is labor intensive, a sense of emptiness and loss. Perhaps if you want to share a little bit about Mama.
Om Shanti. So, why would it interest any of us to hear about Mama? How is that relevant to our own life? And I've noticed, especially in this digital age, whenever we're trying to find out more about a particular topic of interest, we usually go on the internet to Google and we look for an expert, someone we can trust. And I really feel that Mama was an expert in self-transformation, self-empowerment, self-respect. So given that's what we focused on, because we feel that's essential, both to quality of life as well as a response to our current world. So that's why we like to explore these spiritual figures, leaders, because they really are experts. We can see the success in their lives. There was some interesting things shared in our lessons today, our memories of Mama, and one that I think is relevant to the topic today was this topic of tolerance, because any kind of change requires tolerance. The old or the status quo will be resisting the change, and to be able to not succumb to that resistance is really tolerance. But the tolerance wasn't experienced in Mama as a harsh or difficult or punitive thing. It was experienced, it was said, with a lot of happiness and a fulfillment and a very positive experience. So, what was going on inside of the soul? And I think one of the secrets is quite interesting, because Mama was coming out of a culture where the physical wealth was kept in the men's hands, if you will, that these young Kumaris were not going to become wealthy in their own right. But Mama was, spiritually speaking, very, very wealthy. Very, very wealthy. We just heard a message that she did not waste anything. Not a thought, not a word, not an action, not a breath, not time. She had no waste in anything. So she was constantly accumulating. She understood the secret of how the world functions, which is called the law of karma. So she created so much spiritual wealth for herself. This was what was behind her tolerance. She could afford to be tolerant without any sense of loss or difficulty. She has had such an overwhelming a reservoir of resilience, of wisdom, of purity inside. So she never even experienced this tolerance. If someone, and I think she had many challenges on just about every level, whether it was in relationship or the body or a scarcity of some resource. But she really met these challenges with such grace. Some would call it tolerance, but she was very graceful because she was so full inside. So she experienced transformation as such an enjoyable journey, actually quite sustaining. She enjoyed her own transformation. There was no sense of loss, only accumulation.
You may answer my next question with what I say that she followed directions properly. So there's no point asking that part. But following directions in general, to be a challenge. And in this study, and perhaps maybe just in general, maybe souls here following directions and there's something punitive or harsh, or even the word discipline has that kind of connotation because of maybe past learned experiences. So could you share, even just like letting go? You hear say, let go. Like, I don't even know how souls will take that. Let go of, sorrow or whatnot. Let go of, wanting to have waste thoughts. One of the senior students said the other day, you should just not have waste thoughts. You should just be happy that person is getting regard and you're not getting regard. I'm like, I'm not sure if you can just tell, first off, maybe a student who has hardly even been in the study, but maybe even some regular students, it's not like they want to. So is there, I don't know if you can comment on some missing ingredients, because we would all like it to be a very fulfilling experience for this transition.
It was said that Mama, who came as a teenager, was very bright, very, very bright in school. And it turned out she was very bright in spiritual study as well. So she really understood how things worked inside the human spirit, and especially what was at the seed of things. Once we kind of, if we're trying to figure out how a car works, we kind of take it apart and get what's going on deep inside. She really understood, she got the lessons, because when we say following the directions, we behave according to our understanding. So to ask someone to do something, they will continue to do whatever is aligned with their understanding. So Mama really understood the nature of spirituality, and at the seed of the whole thing is really self-respect, personal value. That's kind of driving the whole show. You can call it purity or whatever it is, personal dignity, whatever you wish to call it, but the value of the self is very important. This is why the first lesson is I am a soul. She understood the secret behind that first lesson. Because of getting that seed, the tree grew very properly, if you will. Her spiritual life blossomed very properly. Because quite frankly, it is a lack of self-respect which makes it very difficult to follow spiritual directions. Ego keeps interfering. I want to do what I'm sure is right. I'm sure I'm doing it right. So she had this incredible self-respect because all the directions, they're going to be about, all the directions are about removing body consciousness. All the directions are in direct opposition to body consciousness. So they're going to be very difficult to follow. If I haven't had that, if that seed isn't there, that soul consciousness or self-respect. In fact, very often in our lessons, the direction is given and then the explanation is given. It just says, consider yourself to be a soul. that's what actually makes it possible to follow a spiritual direction. So she kind of understood all of that, and that made her life a lot easier.
What is the role that God plays when it comes to considering myself to be a soul for this to be a fulfilling experience, and in the context of Mama's efforts?
I think the first thing that Mama knew or recognized is that God was the one who was telling her to consider herself to be a soul. She really recognized who was giving these spiritual directions, the absolute authority on spirituality. So it was very easy for her, with complete trust and faith. This is a benevolent being who's giving me these directions. So that was the first thing, recognizing who was giving the directions. And the directions involve developing a very deep relationship, not just with the self as a soul, but also with the Supreme Soul. If one's able to do that, they start to experience enormous attainments. As we say, they have the power to receive from God. And God really is the source of everything we are seeking. We try to go to technology, we try to go to other people, we try to go to all sorts of different things to get what we're hungering for. Again, that personal value. But as the purifier, God is really the only one who can provide that thing that we are seeking. So because she saw all of that very clearly, it was very natural for her to develop a deep connection to God.
It's interesting because, I mean, we don't usually go too much into this topic, but that who is God? It's not a human being. It was quite interesting for just when you had shared about it, not being able to have enough power to receive. Could you share more about what that meant or what that means?
Yeah, the reason we often don't talk about much, because this obviously is very sensitive terrain. Everyone has different feelings about God. Some don't believe in God. But if we look at sort of a traditional, conventional understanding or belief that souls carry of God, those who do have some kind of connection, it often involves worshiping or praying, and almost the sense that we are not, we're at such a lower level than God, that He's really high up here. And this almost unworthiness in our connection to God, even though we say He is the Father, and that is not a normal relationship between a parent and child, for the child to be so afraid of, or fearful of, or sometimes even angry at. So even just to develop maybe a healthier, more empowering relationship with God, that I'm very worthy, very valuable. Maybe, usually I've watched a lot of parents with their children, and they want their children to go ahead of them. They put their children in front. Again, this might sound sacrilegious to some, but such a powerful and almost equal relationship, a very noble relationship with God. This makes it possible for not to go and beg to God or be afraid of God or bow down to God, but to feel I have rights over God. That's really important if I am to receive from that one. And again, it comes down to soul consciousness.
You were sharing that Mama was very full, of course, following directions. And do you feel that it's possible to actually change without fullness, because we're constantly changing all the time? Or is it perhaps maybe we're not changing for the better? Or are we really actually changing for the worse?
I remember once asking a group of souls if they're comfortable with change. And sometimes I think there's some that are just rebellious in the crowd. But I asked, are you comfortable with change? And someone said, oh yeah, no, I'm comfortable with change. I like change. And I asked, are you okay with any change? Any change, not the ones that you create, but any change. Because some will say, yeah, no, I'm good with change. But when things are changing as they are now, for example, let's say it's a change where you lose your job or a change where you lose a loved one. Are you okay with change now? So the types of changes many might embark on, are they powerful enough to cover any condition, any circumstance? I feel that's where spirituality excels. And, part of when we remember Baba is her final change, which she had cancer and it had metastasized, so it was everywhere. Her breathing was quite labored. You see pictures of her in the hospital towards the end, and you'd have no idea that anything was going on. And she genuinely looks light, smiling. Souls were going to be served by her because they felt wonderful in her company. She was okay with any change because she had mastered inner change. So I don't feel any change is going to work in the scope of what we're seeing in the world today. I think it needs to be such a mastery of inner change at this time to be able to remain stable in the face of the enormous outer changes we're seeing.
Perhaps just one last question before we go on reflection. Just regarding today being Mama's Day, Mama's efforts, is there anything you want to share in terms of what could inspire us to really enhance our efforts in this inner transformation?
The Brahma Kumaris is an organization which is the largest organization of its type for men and women that is led by women. And it's an organization that says it puts the mothers in front. And Mama was really an example of that. And it's really a message on not just what leadership can look like, but what self-transformation can look like and the type of qualities that I'm going to need to really be successful and powerful in self-transformation and in responding to changes around me. We now have an approach to change in the world, maybe not personally, which is almost violent. And in Mama, we saw such a patient, gracious, loving, wise, and successful approach to change. She really demonstrates there's another way that's much, much better, where everybody wins. So she was very egoless, and I think that's a secret to success. But that egoless means she had incredible self-respect and a beautiful relationship with both herself and God. So it's easy to talk about these things, but I think it's very impactful when we see a demonstration of these things. And I feel that Mama is that demonstration, that sample of a successful spiritual student.
Thank you, Sister Judy. Perhaps we'll end with a reflection.
It's always a great comfort when we're embarking on something that seems new to have a pioneer in front of us, carving out the path, showing the way, sustaining and reassuring us everything's okay. Brahma was that, but also Mama was that. Never shaking, never afraid, never worried. and teaching us the lesson. It's lovely to have faith in God, faith in others, faith in truth. These are very essential. But it's so important to have faith in the self, deep belief in self. This gives us the power to come close to God and to receive from God, to see the self in the way God sees us, not just as a soul, but an elevated being with profound potential. Mama demonstrated what a spiritual life looks like for one who has this almost godly faith in the self. The first gift from God is to have this deep trust, belief, and love for the self. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Sister Judy. Thank you for those who are joining with us this evening. A warm reminder, next Saturday is our next Learn About Meditation session at the Academy. So 12:15 to 1:30. And again, just please check in at the front desk if you plan to join. Registration is optional on Eventbrite, and you'll find those details on the website calgary.brahmakumaris.ca. And we always have drop-in sessions online. We also have, we mentioned last week, a drop-in meditation session as well at the Academy on Thursdays, 6:30 to 7 o'clock. Once again, registration is optional, but please check in at the front desk. And finally, with our upcoming in August Inner Freedom with our special guest, Sister Shivani, on Friday, August 22nd. If you have not heard about it, please do take a look at the website. Beautiful topic and beautiful sub-theme, healing the heart through forgiveness. Friday, as we mentioned. And if you wish to register ahead of time, you are invited on a pre-journey experience if you wish to have more of a personal progress with this topic prior to the actual event. But or you would, if you wish to just be notified about when the ticket reservations are available, again free of charge for as a service to the community. But you find all those details on the website, as well as all of our drop-in sessions. Everything is on there. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you for joining. Om Shanti.